Hello and welcome to News Laundry Interviews. We've got a very special guest with us today, Mr. Saeed Naqvi, who is a journalist, commentator, a very familiar name to anyone who is a news junkie. And if you don't know already, he's the author of a book called Being the Other, the Muslim in India. So we will of course talk about the book, which is as angry as it is nostalgic, I think. But we'll get to anger and nostalgia later. I wanted to ask you about something that you kind of touch upon a little bit near the end of the book. You started working as a journalist in 1964, right? You've seen print and radio rule the roost. You've seen television creep in. Then you've seen private channels come into India and how that's completely changed the dynamic. And now you're seeing the internet, the next step in either evolution or devolution, we don't know yet. How do you feel Indian media has changed?
Not just the Indian media, the global media. It has lost a little bit in dignity. It has acquired power without responsibility. The cliche nowadays in the Statesman used to be, it was a newspaper of record. One little flaw, and the editor, he had his whole pages marked, and you were quartered.
Right.
So 2 or 3 things had, in fact, anyone from the Statesman, whether in Calcutta or in Delhi, you pick them out. If he or she was in the Statesman in the 60s and even the early 70s, they become simply incapable of taking sides.
Right.
You cannot take sides. If you ask me to tilt it this way, I cannot. The subjective element will be there, but I can't tilt the argument. That was the training then. It was very easy. The approach towards the idea was that in a democracy, people elect a government.
Right.
An independent newspaper's job was to respect the people's verdict. If people had brought in VHP or the Naxalites or the CPM or the Congress or the BJP, our job was to respect the people's verdict, not become the opposition, and accord support to the newspaper, to the government on an issue-by-issue basis. In other words, the roads are bad, you take them to task on that. The economy is bad, you take them. But the position you take is one, people have brought you in, and we respect the people's verdict. That was the key element. There was no, that this is since the Statesman had inherited, had a certain background of British ownership and so on.
Yeah.
So Hindustan Times was much more sort of towards the national movement, whereas the Statesman took a line which had been enunciated by the imperial interests in those days, but not in the 60s. That is it. And in fact, the Statesman suffered. The first Indian editor of the Statesman, Pran Chopra, he went to Calcutta, and they had a united front government. In other words, you had a government in which the left was coming in. He ended up supporting that. What else could he do? But since the Statesman had changed, and a gentleman who used to be the General Secretary of the Swatantra Party in Calcutta, called C.R. Irani, he had become Managing Director. Pran Chopra, the first Indian editor of the Statesman, was also the first Indian editor of the Statesman who was summarily sacked. So already, as soon as business interests came in, you saw a taint over the media.
And those business interests have grown. And
They have grown. Now, after the Statesman, I worked with the Indian Express. Indian Express had Ramnath Goenka. He was a remarkable owner. He had his, like Lord Beaverbrook in England or Hearst in the United States. He had his interests, but his interests were newspapers. He was not selling Pan Parag and running a channel and using the clout to increase his Pan Parag business. And whether Pan Parag or oil or steel or whatever, if that is the collateral, and the collateral damage is enormous.
so in the book, you write about one little run-in that you did have with Ramnath Goenka, right?
Not really. I had a lovely relationship with him. He was very, very upset about the Meenakshipuram conversions. And
Can you tell us a little bit, because that's one of the things that you've devoted a chapter to, and it's I think one of those incidents that aren't as well remembered as perhaps they should be. So could you?
Well, Meenakshipuram, a story came out that about over 500, 600 people had crossed over from one religious to the other and had become Muslims. And the editor here in those days was Nihal Singh, again a statesman man. So he asked me to write an edit. And I wrote an editorial again, okay, this is the structural violence in Hindu society and so on and so forth, which is the reason why these things happen. Now that was complete anathema to the Hindu inside Ramnath Goenka. And I didn't realize, I was innocent, that there were so many people in the Indian Express who felt like him, that I should have actually chastised and said, this is terrible, and they
should stay within the faith. Yeah.
So it was, and then Ramnath Goenka asked Guru Murthy, who is an RSS, I knew him, RSS ideologue. He wrote a piece to sort of more or less correct my line. And there was no line. I was just saying, this has happened for this reason. This should not happen. Nihal Singh, being from the Statesman again, looked at it, tore it, and put it in the waste paper basket. And Ramnath Goenka did not say a thing. Goenka was a very, very intriguing person. He, look, the Tirupati had a bureau. Now, Tirupati, as you know, is the temple, a creme de la creme of all temples. That bureau was retained by Ramnath Goenka for a simple reason. All his lovely VIP guests and all the Marwadis of means who wanted to have a darshan this bureau's job was to organize darshans for them. And therefore it was kept away from the Tirupati happens to be in Andhra.
Right.
But it was kept under a sort of more centralized. I said, look, if I'm becoming editor in Hyderabad first and in Chennai later, that bureau is going to work under me. And he gave in. And believe it or not.
You sound surprised even
now.
Yes.
And he used to drive me. He used to go to Bangalore from Chennai, then Madras. He used to drive and ask me to sit with him. He'd make a triangle. He'd go to Tirupati and then from there to Bangalore and the other way around. And I organized, believe it or not, I organized darshans for my friends. There used to be a very dear friend, many people here would know him, of a little older vintage. His name was Rabinder Seth. He was in tourism. He and his wife Roop, they wanted to go to I arranged it for them. I went in with them.
Oh.
Yes, they had special laddus. Now, whether I had despoiled the god or whether I've been but these things I've done. I have, for instance, I used to tell Ramnathji that I've dipped more in Har Ki Pauri than you ever. Because I was with the Beatles in Chaurasi Kutia. On my way back at Hardwar, I'd take a dip. So whether I've been cleansed or the water has been polluted, I do not know, but he took it as a joke.
He did, right?
Yes, yes. So he gave me a lot of support. And in fact, he was very happy with the way I was functioning. The Marwari simply couldn't understand that here he had this whole empire and he was not making any money. Now, because, what am I saying? He would say, I said, Ramnathji, how can you give that stringer of yours 500 rupees a month? Dekho, look here, usko apne 500 दें, बाकी ऊपर से बना दे, बाकी ऊपर से बना. So a little bit of this was built into the system, and you only thing you could do was to take it with a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And he was very, very, and he used to like ideas, and he said, Naqvi, beta, tu Musalman nahi hove, to main tujhe aaj editor bana दूं. Now, it will come across to you as a communal statement, but he was actually expressing his majburi. This is the way it is.
So this is the default setting, would you say, for a lot of people?
Well, I would say that Marwari newspapers owned Times of India, Hindustan Times. I've had a run on that, and if you want, I can tell long stories on that also.
Please.
They will not have a Muslim as an editor. They will not. And this is just as the New York Times will not have a non-Jew for an editor.
Really?
Yes, it will be very difficult for a WASP to get in there. It will be very difficult.
But don't you think the politics of WASP and Hindu Muslim are slightly different?
Yes, they are. They are very different. This is, in fact, it is there in the book. That is what others you a little bit is, and I reflect. I have had myself had a wonderful innings in journalism. I have no complaints myself, and I wish and I pray to God that every young journalist goes through an innings, 110 countries, and fighting with the system all the time. And promoted and given all the assignments that I could think of, and by the edit. But there's an irony, there's a paradox. There's a wonderful India. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
Even in the 60s, me and my wife, Aruna, having got a job with the Statesman, wouldn't get a house.
Even in the 60s?
In the 60s. So this is not something new.
So what were you told? I'm curious.
No, they would not. They would just shy away. They would not. You would reach a point of negotiation and then nothing would happen. So then Kuldeep Nair and Bikram Singh, they were both in the Statesman. They got together. They got me the house. So in other words, there was a sector in India which was working against those who were not. But then there were other aspects to it. If you go to in Mumbai, the Jains, the colonies which are for Jains, and they won't give a house to anybody. Do you eat onion and garlic? They'll say. So therefore, this sort of sectoral thing, which it was a surprise to me. I had not grown up with this. I had grown up. There was no difference between Hindus and Muslims. In fact, there's a great deal in our background which is Hindu. There has been a great deal of cultural commerce, which is what my book begins with.
Yeah, you've got 2 chapters which are
because
full of this syncretic culture.
People have forgotten that. Yeah. Awadh, I positioned myself in this book in Awadh. And Awadh is an area. So it is a worm's eye view, and also from there a bird's eye view. So now, for instance, the experience of ours in Awadh, in Mustafabad, my lovely Qasbah, would be different from that of the Mapila in Calicut, you see. And yet a certain kind of integration takes place there on different terms. Or Labbais in Tamil Nadu, or the Kelakarai Muslims in Ramanathapuram.
Do you think this is, sorry to interrupt, but do you think this is a problem that happens in the way we talk about Muslims, that they are one homogeneous group apparently?
It's a plot. It's ignorance, and the politician has taken advantage of this ignorance to say that it is a block. I'll give you another example. The Bengali Muslim is a Bengali. He will have sometimes more in common with you than he will with me, because he can't speak my language. He doesn't know Urdu. Inder Gujral, the Prime Minister, was going to Dhaka for a trilateral summit, Pakistan, India and Bangladesh. And lots of people, Nikhil Chakravarti, and naturally all the Bengali gentry in the media, they all clambered onto his plane. And in there suddenly, there's another kind of positive othering. He thought that he's going to a Muslim country, so he should take a Muslim journalist also with him. So he asked me, he said, will you come? I said, of course I'll come. So I got into the plane. Now, I turn up in Dhaka as a solitary Muslim in that delegation. Now, they all were, bhalo bhalo, ilish maj, khabo khabo, it was all, they and the Bengalis on both sides, they got together. I have never in my life felt more lonesome with my Islam. Islam was relegated absolutely there, it didn't matter. Neither Inder knew, nor had I understood this. And when I go back to Bangladesh, you see, it is my belief, and I haven't had the time to dilate on that in that book, that of the three entities that came out after partition, the most secure is Bangladesh. It is culturally, because we seamlessly moved from British Raj to call it Indian Raj or call it Hindu Raj, whichever way you look at it. Nehru's very dear friend Maulana Azad called it, it will be, if you partition the country, he said, it will be unadulterated Hindu Raj.
Hindu Raj.
He said that, and Pandit Ji knew it. Bangladesh, actually, it was not seamless. It was not an imperial project. Mountbatten didn't have it. They fought in blood. Hundreds and lakhs of people were killed. Real ahuti, real sacrifice, and they're very proud of it. Their Bengali identity supersedes their Islam. Islam is very important to them. Now, this conflict that is going on is the residual 30% from the old Jamaat-e-Islami Pakistan days that is still there. But take it from me, the manner in which that country came into being, the 70% will prevail. This will not work out.
Yeah, so, one hopes so, for sure.
Yeah. It's there. I can see it. So of the three, they are the most secure. Because it is, religion is not the only fulcrum. It is Bengali nationalism.
Yeah, it is a country that was born for a language. Yes. And everything that is embodied in that language, after all. So when you were talking about being the token Muslim in this trip to Bangladesh, I was thinking that you've mentioned at one point in the book about how Gandhiji is writing in a letter to Pandit Nehru that there needs to be a Muslim. How do you feel this token status has impacted?
It has been there right throughout. The terms of endearment in 1947 were not spelt out properly. This whole mumbo jumbo of a secular India, the way partition happened, it is automatic. As it is as certain as night follows the day that that which is happening today would happen.
You've said that the partition was Congress's gift to the Hindu right, almost in as many words, right? And what you do for a significant part of the book is also take on someone who it seems was a bit of a hero and a legend
For us.
for you, right? Pandit Nehru.
Oh, for all of us.
So can you tell me a little bit about why Nehru did occupy that kind of space and why, when you came across the betrayal, why it felt that way?
Nehru was most like us in that he was part of. Don't forget that Urdu language, people don't know this. Urdu language was nurtured by Kashmiri Pandits. The first prose writer in Urdu is Pandit Ratanath Sarshar. People don't know that. His 16-volume Fasana-e-Azad is a classic. Brij Narayan Chakbast is a Kashmiri Pandit. So the Kashmiri Pandit completely, he adapted he was much better at spoken Urdu than even the Muslim elite. Why? Because the Muslim elite were in touch with the grassroots, right, and they had a little lilt of Awadhi and Braj Bhasha and so on. He was pure. So Pandit Ji came from that. The Kashmiri Pandit settled in Awadh, and his father, Motilal Nehru, was a Persian, almost he could speak
Scholar
Persian.
Practically.
So Pandit Ji was we couldn't, in our family was divided in two portions. My father's elder brother was the first Congress MLA from Raebareli. I mentioned that there. And I used to tell Rajiv that you imagine that this is all bunkum. That, Nehru, Gandhi, Parivar and Raebareli, it happened. In my eyes, I was a little toddler when Firoz Gandhi wove his parliamentary constituency around my uncle's assembly constituency. When he came in with a strange thing. I will never ever forget it, and I think I mentioned it somewhere there, that he came with, in those days, the Americans were giving all sorts of, among them was a PL 480 butter and milk to be distributed among the famine-stricken people here and there. And my Dadi's house, up to the ceiling, was filled with ghee cans. She didn't know what to do with it. Now, Firoz had brought it, truckloads of it, to be distributed among the panchayats, among the influential people and so on, which my uncle was completely, he didn't know all this.
Right.
So, therefore, on one hand, we were Congressites. On the other side, we were very proud of Urdu. So there you had a whole spate of people who were professors and who had done masters and PhDs in Urdu. Suddenly Urdu was at a discount. And now what should they do? Many of them, people again don't realize it, that the entire progressive writers movement was manned by and large by the gentry in this area who joined the Communist Party. So on the one hand, there were Congressites from my father's side. My mother's side, they were a little more educated and more sophisticated. They were communists. They had glided from feudalism.
Feudal aristocracy to communism.
From feudalism to communism. They had missed out on the middle class experience.
Right.
You see? It's very strange. And then...
And in this world was Nehru.
And Nehru was, by God, he was because he was both. Even the communists, because of his this left-leaning, his Fabian socialist and all. So both ends of the family adored him. They couldn't criticize him. We couldn't call him Nehru. We couldn't call him Jawaharlal. My grandfather would shout at us.
You had to call him?
Pandit Ji, Pandit Nehru. They all called him Pandit Ji and Pandit Nehru. He was the undisputed leader of Indian Muslims until his death in 1964. Not any Muslim. Not Maulana Azad. Not Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. He. Now that is the way the Muslims had pitched their tents around Jawaharlal Nehru. So when he partitioned the country, Muslims went along with him. That he didn't partition, but when the whole team accepted partition.
But you put a lot of the responsibility at his doorstep.
Because we trusted him the most. We didn't expect anything from Patel. We didn't expect anything from Babu Rajendra Prasad. We didn't expect anything from Raja Gopalachari. None of these people. They were not ours the same Pandit Ji was. You see? So therefore the angst against him is much more. Because they were not ours the way he was. That is why the feeling of being let down by him is so pronounced.
And you chart this out in the book, that the kind of inequality and the sense of betrayal really that comes from partition, the next huge blow to it is Babri Masjid. And that is another...
Then Zamindari abolition. He said, he told all the landed people, whatever little lands they had, don't worry. Yes. You see, Muslims in that area had taken 3 hits already. First, their very beloved king, Wajid Ali Shah, in 1856, had been dispatched to Matia Burj in Bengal, outside Calcutta. 1857, Lucknow had been ravaged.
Yeah.
All right? We somehow stayed aloof in Mustafabad, preserving what we thought our culture, which was Urdu, very much so. Very opposed to Western education. That would be deleterious to our sort of cultural entity. That is very important. Then came 47. Then came 51, Zamindari abolition. And by the time people began to, and yet, until his death, he was the icon. And then the other side began to say, look, vote bank politics. That is how it started. Our trust in Pandit Ji carried over to the next generation of Nehru Gandhi Parivar, and that attracted them. My God, these people are bloc, vote for them. So then began this thing, incantation, appeasement, and how appeased the Indian Muslim was became clear when the Sachar Committee report came out in 2005.
Yeah, and in fact, the follow-up that I think around 2011-12, there was a report to just look at the comparison.
Much earlier there was a report. They didn't.
There hasn't been much improvement.
They have not been able to make public the report on Bombay riots.
Yeah.
You see, when every politician is known. So therefore this, and they think that the Muslims will just keep watching and they're not registering. They know it. They know. And that is the anguish. So the anguish is the complete successive letdown by all these people, and right up to present times. So some of my Congress friends, they get angry. I said Congress and the BJP after 1990. Congress and the BJP, Tweedledum and Tweedledee. And
how do you feel about them now?
I think that's exactly the same. They're voting together in the same, on all bills, they're together. The great Bonhami. And where's the difficulty?
So you've got a long transcript of your interview with Deodas.
Yes.
Right. And there's one point at which he tells you to say Hindu culture rather than Indian culture. And he has an issue with the word composite because you're asking him to comment on that. When you've been in positions like that, how has your Muslim identity come up at that point, or have you?
My Muslim identity was always an integrated Muslim identity. It was never. We were not conditioned by the mullah. In fact, we were conditioned by our poets. We were conditioned by our writers. We were conditioned by our people do not know this. In the whole range of Urdu poetry, entire range of it, 300 years of it, there's not a single couplet in support of the mullah. the entire political class went for the mullah and left this body. It didn't suit them. It didn't suit them for a variety of reasons. And not a single couplet. In fact, the mullah is an object of humor, a butt of jokes, and he is constantly, right through, whether you see Ghalib or Mir or modern poets, exactly the same.
So is there a couplet that you have identified with for yourself over the years? Is there something that's held on for you?
Oh, of course. कृष्ण का हूँ पुजारी, अली का बंदा हूँ, यगाना शान खुदा देख कर रहा न गया. Yagana is the name of the poet, and he's a 20th century poet. He says, when I saw the wonders of God, I could not contain myself. Maulana Hasrat Mohani, he was a member of the Constituent Assembly. He was a Maulana. His songs of Thumri words on Krishna are unparalleled. People don't know this. Abdul Rahim Khan Khana, whose tomb is here in Nizamuddin East, that tomb. He's the sole poet who wrote of Lord Rama in Sanskrit. People don't know that. This has been ignored. There's almost a political plot to sideline this because you want to see them as a religious entity. We are part of the global phenomenon. When you see pictures of Muslims, their heads are down, the bottoms are up, they are in their namaz, but this is not all.
And how do you respond to someone who will turn around and say that that's not a good Muslim? The good Muslim is the one who's, in front of the...
That is the most dangerous thing. It is dangerous because you may think that Saeed Naqvi is a very likable kind of Muslim. But then that is very dangerous because by conferring this patronage on me, you have more or less bought the right to dislike that other fellow. What you have to take out of the bargain is dislike itself, hatred itself. So why can't you become that kind of a Muslim? You are already onto a political track.
Right.
That means there is another kind of Muslim that you and I can get to. There is reform required, just as Gau's Rakshaks have to be reformed. Similarly, there has to be reform in Muslim. Women's education is the big thing. Not all this, whatever else, this business of terror and so on and so forth. That's a very important chapter there on terror. Women's education. That is languishing unless the community educates itself. It is common knowledge that you educate the boy, he gets a job.
Yeah.
You educate the woman, and she educates the family. This used to be the old saying. Now, of course, the whole terms are changing.
But I think it still makes more of an impact because you are going against tradition each time you do educate a woman in South Asia in general across religious boundaries. And that's why it makes such a difference. That's why it changes a family.
They are startling revelation. You know, Razia Sultana was the Empress of Hindustan.
Sure.
No one talks about her. Why? Why?
Why do you think they do?
Because why is the Qutb in darkness? I mean, you have, if the Eiffel Tower is the most beautiful center point of Paris, the Big Ben in London dominates all views. It is a 158-year-old monument, Big Ben. Eiffel Tower, 137 years old. Here you've got an 822-year-old monument, and you keep it in darkness. I said, why do you do that? Oh, sir, Bajaj was given the contract to illuminate it. Their bulbs didn't work. This is it. Now that hurts. That hurts much more to me than some lumpens getting hold of a cow dung and urine paste and shoving it down the throat. It is vulgar. And it does not worry me so much because the Hindu is even more dismayed by this image than I am. He said, what is this? He's giving us a bad name. In my village, people would say, Bhaiya, 2 din roti nahi kha paye. I couldn't eat bread for 2 days. That is what they say in my village, Hindus. So that is, but this worries me. You are already keeping the Qutub in the dark. You will keep there are 4,000 monuments. UNESCO wants to confer heritage city status on
Delhi.
This has not happened in BJP's time. It has been going on for years. All the 7 cities of Delhi have a Muslim ambiance. Kya kare bhai? Okay. It is narrowed down. Shahjahanabad and Lutyens, Delhi will be the 2 cities which will be, so UNESCO is invited and UNESCO people come and dossiers are ready. Already not by Muslims, all, again, the sector of India which will eventually come on top, I promise you. They have prepared these dossiers that this is Lutyens, Delhi, and that is Shahjahanabad. Now what happens is, when UNESCO is there, a hand comes from somewhere, whisks those files away, and they are in the Prime Minister's office. Why? If you are going to be the capital city of this great country called Hindustan, you do not consider it as part of your heritage, there's something deeply disturbing about it.
So looking forward.
That is there in the book.
Yes.
And I've called a spade a spade. That's it.
But going forward, how do we change the default settings?
Many things. Firstly, realize the mistake that was made. How do you realize it? As I said, I think mentioned there, in 1947, we entrapped ourselves in a triangle. Very important. New Delhi, Srinagar, India, Pakistan, Hindu, Muslim are one complex of issues. If you touch one angle, Kashmir, you have to bring in Pakistan. You touch Pakistan, Hindu-Muslim temperatures come down. If they come down, your project of Hindu Rashtra, because you are worried on a different count, that it takes a back seat. So therefore, that is the trap. What do we do about it? We come to the media. What has happened is, the politician will not do it. He has a vested interest in this state of affairs. The parliament will not do it. Give us back our spaces where we discussed, where liberal discourse took place. What I am talking to you today is not one-to-one only. Let 100 flowers bloom. Let the city squares become like the old Athenian towns. Let them be like in the ancient days. We were like that in Lucknow, in Awadh. People got together in the coffee house. Everybody did. There was no Hindu-Muslim then. Ideas were discussed openly, and not this controlled media, and not this chow, which, and it has divided the country. It has divided the country. Take it from me. Let me give you the example how this media has divided the country. And I know it more than others because I was there.
Sure.
1990-91, Soviet Union comes down. The Americans, who have won, one system has won, the other system has lost. They want to put their seal on this victory. Operation Desert Storm is launched in Iraq. My friend Peter Arnett, on the terrace of Al Rashid Hotel, launches very, very important, the global media, where you and your parents saw a war in the drawing room.
Yeah.
It had never happened.
It was the first time.
This live coverage of war. What happened? The Western world saw triumphalism, machinery. Iraqi and the Muslim world saw it as humiliation, defeat. what with this one television show, you had divided the world, and global media, you had divided the world into two sets of audiences. And when we mimic that, do we realize that we are guilty of exactly that division? You think that this shouting matches that go on your television when you get generals from Pakistan, I don't know how they appear there. I mean, they come to be chastised and to be beaten with shoes, and they sit there. Why? I don't know. Anyway,
but it makes that division.
But the division is so sharp that the Muslims feel one way, Pakistanis feel another, and if you think that that Indian Muslims are all with that lot, they are not. You widen the gulf. Why? Triangle. Srinagar, New Delhi, India, Pakistan, Hindu, Muslim are one complex of issues.
And on that happy note, thank you
happy
so
note.
much. It is a happy note,
yes.
because you've given us a solution for the future, which is to have conversations and to have a space where there is actually independence of thought and freedom of expression.
That's it.
Which is the one place where you can have that is actually the media, the independent media, which is my turn to say pay to keep news free, which means subscribe to News Laundry or subscribe to an independent media of your choice, because as Mr. Naqvi has just told us, and you can take it from authorities like him, that is the future to a more united and hopefully a more syncretic composite India. Thank you, Mr. Naqvi.
No doubt about it. I have no doubt whatsoever.
Thank you again.
Bye.
If you like that, click here to support us and down here to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and do check out the other stuff we do like News Laundry interviews, Why So Serious, animations, comics, panel discussions, podcasts which are really big, and much, much more.